Maya Collins wiped the rain from her face as she stood at the edge of the giant hole in the mountain. The storm had been going for 3 days now, and the wind was so strong it nearly knocked her over. She pulled her coat tighter and looked down into the darkness below. 3 days ago, the miners had been blasting rocks to find metal deep inside Mount Crystal. Something went wrong. The explosion was much bigger than anyone expected. It tore open the whole side of the mountain and made a huge cave that nobody knew was there. Maya was a scientist who studied alien animals and plants. She had been living on the planet New Haven for 15 years, ever since she was 23 years old. She had seen many strange creatures in that time, but her computer was showing her something different about this cave. The readings were unlike anything she had ever seen before. The cave was glowing. Even in the storm, Maya could see a soft orange light coming from deep inside the hole. Her scanner beeped and showed numbers that made no sense. It was some kind of energy down there that was not in any of her books or computer files. Maya checked her rope and climbing gear one more time. She was alone, which was dangerous, but she could not wait. The energy readings were getting weaker every hour. If there was some new form of life down there, it might not survive much longer. She started climbing down into the cave. Her headlight cut through the darkness, and she could see that the walls were covered with strange patterns. The patterns looked like they were made by some intelligent creature, not just random scratches. They seemed to glow with their own light, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. The deeper Maya went, the warmer it became. This was strange because caves were usually cold. Air also smelled different, like metal and fire mixed together. Her scanner kept beeping faster and faster as she got closer to the bottom. When Maya finally reached the cave floor, she turned her headlight around to see what was there. What she saw made her gasp and step backward. 7 huge creatures lay on the ground around her. They looked like dragons from old Earth stories, but they were real. Each one was about 12 feet tall, with long necks and beautiful heads that had bony crests on top. Their bodies were built for both flying and walking, with powerful legs and wings that were folded against their sides. But they were all dead. Maya walked slowly among the creatures, being very careful not to disturb them. Her scientist mind was racing. These were clearly intelligent beings. Their bodies were positioned in a circle as if they had been trying to protect something in the center. The largest one, probably a female, had her wings spread over the others. Maya took pictures and made notes on her computer. This was the discovery of a lifetime. New intelligent species right here on New Haven. But as she studied the bodies, she realized something terrible had happened. The explosion 3 days ago had caused rocks to fall and block the cave entrance. These creatures had been trapped inside. Maya's air scanner showed that poisonous gases from the mining blast had slowly filled the cave. The dragons had died from breathing the bad air. Then Maya heard something that made her heart jump. It was a soft crying sound, like a baby animal in pain. She followed the sound to the center of the circle, where the largest female dragon lay. Pressed against the female's warm body was the smallest creature Maya had ever seen. It was no bigger than a house cat covered in golden scales that flickered, like tiny flames. The baby dragon's eyes opened when Maya's light fell on it, and she saw intelligence there that took her breath away. The little creature was dying. Maya could see that right away. It was too thin, and its breathing was shallow and fast. Her scanner showed that it was dehydrated and had not eaten in days. Without help, it would be dead within hours. Maya knelt down next to the baby dragon. It did not try to run or attack her. Instead, it looked up at her with those big, smart eyes and made a soft sound that seemed almost like a question. As if it was asking her what she was going to do. Maya had rules to follow. When scientists found something new and important, they were supposed to call for help and let other experts study it. They were not supposed to touch or move anything. This was different. This was a living creature that needed help, right? Now, she reached out slowly and gently picked up the baby dragon. It was surprisingly light, and its scales were warm to the touch. The little creature curled up in her arms and made a purring sound that vibrated through its whole body. Maya looked around at the dead adult dragons. She thought about what they must have been like when they were alive. Intelligent, social creatures, who cared for their young. The adults had died protecting this baby, keeping it safe as long as they could. She made her decision. Maya carefully put the baby dragon inside her jacket, close to her body where it would stay warm. She started climbing back up toward the surface. Being extra careful not to slip or fall, the little creature stayed quiet during the climb, as if it understood that they both needed to be careful. When Maya reached the top of the cave, the storm was still raging. She ran through the rain to her vehicle and drove as fast as she could back to her research station. All the way there, she could feel the baby dragon's tiny heartbeat against her chest. At her lab, Maya set up a warm, safe place for the little creature. She used heat lamps and soft blankets to make a nest. Then she started running tests to figure out what the baby dragon needed to survive. The tests showed that the creature needed a very specific diet. It could not eat normal food. It needed rare minerals that were only found near volcanoes. Its body temperature had to stay at exactly 104 degrees, or it would get sick. Most importantly, it needed constant care and attention. Maya looked at the baby dragon sleeping in its makeshift nest. She had no idea how to take care of such a creature. She did not know if it would even live through the night. But she had made a promise when she picked it up in that cave. She was going to try her best to save it. She decided to call it Ember, because of the way its golden scales seemed to glow like tiny flames. As she watched Ember sleep, Maya realized that her life had just changed in ways she could not even imagine. Yet, the baby dragon was completely dependent on her now. If she told anyone about Ember, the government would take him away to study. Scientists would want to run tests that might hurt him. Military people might want to use him as a weapon. Corporate people would see him as something to make money from. Maya could not let that happen. Ember was not just a scientific discovery or a valuable resource. He was a baby who had lost his entire family and needed someone to care for him. Maya had found him. Now, he was her responsibility. She spent that first night sitting next to Ember's nest, watching him breathe and making sure he stayed warm. Every few hours, she would give him tiny amounts of the mineral mixture she had prepared. She did not know if it was right, but it was the best she could do. As the sun came up over New Haven, Maya was still awake, still watching over the little dragon. Ember opened his eyes and looked at her, and she could swear she saw gratitude there. He made that soft purring sound again, and Maya gently stroked his tiny head with one finger. She had no idea what she was getting into. She did not know that caring for Ember would become the most important thing she would ever do, or that their bond would one day help save an entire planet. All she knew was that she had made a choice to help a creature that needed her, and she was going to see it through no matter what happened. The first month was the hardest time of Maya's life. Ember was so small and weak that she was afraid he might die at any moment. She had to feed him every 2 hours, even during the night. Maya would set her alarm clock to wake her up. She would stumble out of bed to give Ember his special mineral food. The food was a big problem. Maya had to travel to the volcanic areas of New Haven to collect the right minerals. These trips took a whole day, and she could not leave Ember alone for that long. So she made a special carrier that would keep him warm and safe. While she drove her vehicle across the rough ground to the lava fields, Ember seemed to understand that Maya was trying to help him. Even when he was hungry or uncomfortable, he never tried to bite or scratch her. Instead, he would make soft, chirping sounds that seemed to say he was grateful for her care. After 6 weeks, Ember started to get stronger. His golden scales became brighter, and he began to move around more in his nest. Maya had turned her entire research lab into a home for the baby dragon. She moved all her scientific equipment to one side and filled the rest of the space with heat lamps, soft bedding, and toys she made from safe materials. When Ember was 2 months old, he took his first steps. Maya was working at her computer when she heard a small thud behind her. She turned around and saw Ember standing on wobbly legs next to his nest. He had climbed out by himself for the first time. Maya felt tears in her eyes as she watched Ember take tiny, careful steps across the lab floor. His legs were still weak, but he was determined to explore his world. Maya got down on her hands and knees and crawled next to him, ready to catch him if he fell. Ember looked up at Maya, and made a sound she had never heard before. It was like a purr mixed with a musical note. Maya realized that Ember was trying to communicate with her in a new way. She made a similar sound back to him. Ember's eyes seemed to light up with excitement. From that day on, Ember and Maya began to develop their own way of talking to each other. Ember could make many different sounds, from deep growls to high chirps to musical tones that sounded almost like singing. Maya learned that each sound meant something different. A low rumble meant Ember was happy and comfortable. A sharp chirp meant he wanted attention. A series of musical notes meant he was excited about something. By the time Ember was 6 months old, he was as big as a medium dog. His scales had changed from light gold to a beautiful deep golden color, with hints of red around the edges. His neck had grown longer, and the crest on his head was starting to develop the elegant shape Maya had seen on the adult dragons in the cave. But the most amazing thing about Ember was how smart he was becoming. Maya realized that he understood everything she said to him. When she told him it was time to eat, he would go to his feeding bowl. When she said it was time to sleep, he would go to his sleeping area. When she was working on her computer and asked him to be quiet, he would lie down and wait patiently. Ember also started to show that he could think about complex problems. Maya's lab had a door that was hard to open because the handle was high up, and you had to turn it a certain way. One day Maya watched Ember study the door for a long time. Then he stood up on his back legs, grabbed the handle with his front claws, and turned it exactly the right way to open the door. Maya had to be very careful to keep Ember's existence a secret. She told her colleagues that she was working on a long research project that required her to spend most of her time alone in her lab. When other scientists asked to visit her lab, she always found excuses to meet them somewhere else. The hardest part was when Dr. Robert Stone, the head of the research station, decided to do a surprise inspection of all the labs. Maya got a message that he was coming in 30 minutes. She quickly moved Ember to a storage room in the back of her lab and told him to stay very quiet. Dr. Stone walked through Maya's lab, looking at her equipment and asking questions about her work. The whole time Maya was terrified that Ember would make a sound or that Dr. Stone would want to look in the storage room. But Ember seemed to understand the danger. He stayed completely silent until Dr. Stone left. When Ember was 1 year old, something wonderful happened. Maya was having a very difficult day. Her computer had broken down, she had spilled chemicals on some important papers, and she was feeling frustrated and sad. She sat down on the floor of her lab, put her head in her hands. Ember came over to her and gently pressed his head against her arm. Then he began to make the most beautiful sound Maya had ever heard. It was like singing, but much more complex than any human song. The melody seemed to flow and change, sometimes sad, sometimes hopeful, but always comforting. Maya realized that. Ember was trying to make her feel better. He had seen that she was upset, and he was using his voice to comfort her, just like she had comforted him when he was small and scared. From that moment on, Maya and Ember's relationship changed. They were no longer just caretaker and animal. They'd become true friends who cared about each other's feelings. By his 2nd year, Ember had grown to be 3 feet tall. He was still growing, but more slowly now. His intelligence had developed to an amazing level. He began to use his claws to scratch symbols in the dirt outside Maya's lab. At first, Maya thought he was just playing. But then she realized that the symbols had meaning. Ember would draw a circle with lines. Coming out of it when he wanted to go outside in the sunshine, would draw wavy lines when he wanted water. Most amazing of all, he would draw a simple picture of Maya's face when he wanted her attention. Maya started teaching Ember about human writing and numbers. She would show him letters and numbers on her computer screen, and Ember would copy them in the dirt with his claws. Within a few months, Ember could write simple words like food, water, and Maya. But Ember's learning went far beyond just copying what Maya taught him. He began to create his own symbols for ideas that were too complex for simple words. He drew elaborate pictures that seemed to show memories of his life before Maya found him. These drawings made Maya realize that Ember remembered his family and the cave where he was born. During Ember's 3rd year, Maya became very sick with a fever that lasted for several days. She was too weak to get out of bed, and she was worried. about who would take care of Ember, but she did not need to worry. Ember took care of her instead. He brought her water in a container he had somehow made from materials in the lab. He lay next to her bed and regulated his body temperature to keep her cool when the fever was high and warm when she had chills. He even brought her food, though it was just the mineral mixture he usually ate. When Maya finally got better, she realized that Ember had never left her side during the entire time she was sick. He had watched over her with the same care and dedication that she had shown him when he was a baby. Maya looked at Ember, now 3 years old and growing into a magnificent creature, and she understood that something special had happened between them. They had formed a bond that went beyond species, beyond the usual relationship between human and animal. They had become family. But Maya also realized that their peaceful life together could not last forever. Ember was getting bigger and more noticeable. His intelligence was developing in ways that would eventually attract attention from the outside world. Maya did not know it yet. But in just a few years, Ember would discover something that would force them to reveal their secret to the world. For now, though, she was content to watch him grow and learn, knowing that every day they had together was a gift neither of them had expected to receive. By the time Ember reached his 4th year, he had grown to be 6 feet tall. His golden scales now had deep red streaks running through them, and they seemed to glow brighter when he was excited or worried. His intelligence had developed far beyond what Maya had ever imagined possible for any creature, human or alien. Maya had also changed during these years. Taking care of Ember had taught her to see the world in new ways. She had learned to communicate without words to understand emotions through body language, and to solve problems by thinking like a completely different kind of mind. Their communication had become so advanced that other people might have thought they were reading each other's thoughts. Ember would start drawing symbols in the dirt, and Maya would understand complex ideas before he finished. Maya would begin to speak, and Ember would respond to her thoughts before she finished her sentences. But their peaceful life was about to be disrupted by a discovery that would change everything. Maya had been monitoring the seismic activity on New Haven as part of her regular research duties. For the past year, she had noticed small earthquakes happening more frequently near the area where she had found Ember. The earthquakes were not dangerous yet, but the pattern worried her. She set up monitoring equipment in the mountains around the old cave system. What she found in the data made her very concerned. The planet's surface was shifting in ways that suggested something big was happening. Deep underground, Maya showed the data to Ember, hoping he might understand something about the geology of his home planet that she did not. Ember studied the computer screens for a long time, making soft humming sounds that Maya had learned meant he was thinking very hard about something. Then Ember went outside and began drawing in the dirt, but this time his drawings were different from anything Maya had seen before. Instead of simple symbols or pictures, Ember created a complex 3-dimensional map that covered the entire area behind Maya's lab. The map showed the inside of the planet New Haven. Maya could see layers of rock, underground rivers, and deep caves that her equipment had never detected. But most importantly, Ember's drawing showed cracks and weak points in the planet's structure that were much more serious than Maya's instruments had revealed. Maya stared at the drawing and felt fear growing in her stomach. If Ember's map was correct, New Haven was sitting on top of a geological disaster waiting to happen. The planet's crust was unstable in ways that could cause massive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and other catastrophes. Maya ran computer simulations based on Ember's drawings. Her programs confirmed what the young dragon had somehow known instinctively. The stress fractures in the planet's deep rock layers were spreading. In a few months, they would reach a critical point where the entire continental shelf could shift. The colony of New Haven had 30,000 people living on it. If Ember's predictions were correct, most of them would die when the geological catastrophe began. Maya faced the most difficult decision of her life. She could no longer keep Ember's existence secret if she wanted to save all those people. But revealing him would mean losing him to government scientists, military researchers, and corporate executives who would see him as a valuable resource rather than the intelligent, caring person she knew him to be. For weeks, Maya struggled. With what to do, she prepared evacuation plans that she could never explain to anyone. She practiced speeches where she would try to convince the colonial authorities to take action based on her scientific data alone. But deep down she knew that no one would believe her without proof. The only proof she had was Ember. Ember seemed to understand Maya's dilemma. He began spending more time outside, as if he was preparing himself to be seen by other humans. He also started teaching Maya new symbols that seemed to be related to his people's history and knowledge. One evening, as Maya was working late, her lab, Ember came to her and began drawing a new kind of symbol. This one was different from all the others. It looked like two figures standing together, one human and one dragon, with lines connecting them to many other figures. Maya studied the drawing and realized what Ember was trying to tell her. He was showing her that their partnership was meant to be more than just a private relationship between two individuals. Their bond was supposed to help bring together different kinds of intelligent beings for a greater purpose. Ember had made his choice. He was ready to reveal himself to save the people of New Haven. The decision was taken away from both of them when Commander Lisa Brady of the Colonial Defense Force arrived at Maya's research station on a cold morning in late autumn. Brady was a tough, practical woman who had been investigating the unusual seismic readings that Maya had been reporting to the colonial government. Maya's heart stopped when she saw the military vehicles approaching her lab. She quickly told Ember to hide in the storage room, but it was too late. Ember had grown too large to fit in the small space, and there was nowhere else for him to go. Commander Brady walked into the lab with 3 soldiers behind her. She was expecting to find evidence that Maya had been falsifying her geological reports or hiding some kind of advanced detection equipment that she was not supposed to have. Instead, she found herself face to face with a 6-foot-tall dragon. For a long moment, nobody moved. Ember stood perfectly still in the center of the lab, his golden and red scales catching the light from Maya's equipment. His intelligent eyes moved from Maya to Commander Brady and back again, as if he was trying to decide what to do. Brady's hand moved toward her weapon, but something about Ember's posture stopped her. There was nothing threatening about the way he stood. Instead, he seemed calm and dignified, like a person meeting strangers and trying to make a good impression. "Dr. Collins," Brady said slowly, never taking her eyes off Ember, "I think you have some explaining to do." What happened next was the most important conversation in the history of New Haven Colony. Maya told Commander Brady everything. She explained how she had found Ember as a dying baby, how she had cared for him for 4 years, and how his intelligence had developed far beyond what anyone thought possible. Most importantly, Maya showed Brady the seismic data and Ember's geological predictions. She explained that the planet was heading toward a catastrophe that would kill everyone on New Haven unless they took action immediately. Commander Brady was a soldier, but she was also responsible for protecting the colony's citizens. When Maya showed her the computer simulations based on Ember's drawings, Brady realized that the threat was real, regardless of where the information had come from. "How long do we have?" Brady asked. Maya looked at Ember's most recent drawings. Based on his predictions, the first major earthquakes will start in about 6 weeks. Brady was quiet for a moment, thinking about the logistics of evacuating 30,000 people. Then Ember stepped forward and moved to Maya's computer terminal. Using a special stylus that Maya had made for his claws, he began typing on the keyboard. The message that appeared on the screen changed everything. "Not evacuate. Fix. Dragons knew how, I remember." Brady stared at the screen, then at Ember, then at Maya. "Are you telling me that he knows how to prevent this disaster?" Maya nodded. "The adult dragons I found in the cave, Ember's people, they lived on this planet for thousands of years. They must have faced this same problem before and found a solution." Ember began drawing again, this time creating detailed diagrams that showed underground chambers filled with crystalline formations. The drawings suggested that there were ancient systems built by his people that could be used to stabilize the planet's geological structure. Commander Brady made a decision that would change the course of human history on New Haven. Instead of following protocol and calling for backup to capture and study the alien creature, she chose to trust Maya and Ember. "Show me these caves," she said, "and tell me what we need to do to save this colony." As they prepared to leave the lab, Maya realized that her quiet life with Ember was over. From now on, they would be working together, not just as friends, but as partners in an effort to save 30,000 human lives. The secret was out, and there was no going back. But looking at Ember as he gathered his drawings and prepared to lead them to the ancient dragon caves, Maya felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. They were about to embark on the most important mission of their lives, and they would face it together. The journey to the ancient cave system took 3 days. Maya, Ember, and Commander Brady traveled with a small team of engineers and scientists who had been sworn to secrecy about Ember's existence. The group included Lieutenant Jake Morrison, who was an expert in heavy machinery, and Dr. Kate Phillips, specialized in energy systems. Maya watched nervously as the humans met Ember for the first time. She was afraid they would be scared of him or treat him like a dangerous animal. But Ember seemed to understand how important it was to make a good impression. He moved slowly and carefully around the humans, and he used his gentlest voice tones when he tried to communicate with them. Dr. Phillips was the first to realize that Ember was not just intelligent, but that his knowledge was far beyond what any human possessed when she showed him readings from her energy detection equipment. Ember was able to point out problems with the calibration that she had missed. When Lieutenant Morrison demonstrated some of the drilling equipment they had brought, Ember drew diagrams showing more efficient ways to use the tools. The closer they got to the cave system, the more excited Ember became. His scales glowed brighter, and he made musical humming sounds that seemed to express happiness mixed with anticipation. Maya realized that returning to his birthplace was awakening memories and instincts that had been sleeping in his mind for years. When they finally reached the area where Maya had first found Ember, everything had changed. The mining explosion from years ago had altered the landscape, and new passages had opened up in the mountainside. But Ember seemed to know exactly where to go. He led them to a section of the cave system that Maya had never seen before. Hidden behind fallen rocks and overgrown vegetation was an entrance that glowed with the same amber light Maya remembered from the day she found Ember. But this glow was much stronger, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost like breathing. As they entered the hidden caves, Maya felt like she was stepping into another world. The walls were covered with intricate patterns that moved and shifted in the light. The air hummed with a low frequency that she could feel in her bones. Most amazing of all, the caves were filled with crystal formations that seemed to be alive. With energy, Ember walked among the crystals like he was greeting old friends. He would touch certain crystals with his claws, and they would respond by glowing brighter or changing their harmonic frequency. Maya realized that these were not just natural rock formations. They were some kind of technology created by Embers. People thousands of years ago. Commander Brady was a practical person who did not usually believe in things she could not understand. But even she could see that they had discovered something far beyond human science. The crystals seemed to be storing and processing information in ways that human computers could not match. Ember began to teach them about the ancient systems. Using a combination of drawings, gestures, and the new symbols he had been developing, he explained that the crystals were connected to the planet's deep structure. The dragon civilization had learned to work with the natural forces of the planet instead of fighting against them. Dr. Phillips worked with Ember to understand how the crystal technology functioned. She discovered that the crystals could detect and respond to seismic activity from hundreds of miles away. It could also generate focused energy beams that could influence the movement of underground rock layers. The solution to New Haven's geological crisis was not to prevent the earthquakes, but to redirect the energy safely. The dragon technology could channel the stress from the planet's shifting crust into space, where it would cause no damage. But there was a problem. The ancient systems had been dormant for thousands of years. Many of the crystals had lost their charge, and some of the control mechanisms had been damaged by time and geological changes. To make the system work again, they would need to combine dragon technology with human engineering. Lieutenant Morrison and his team began installing human power sources to recharge the dormant crystals. Dr. Phillips worked on creating interfaces between human computers and the dragon control systems. Maya coordinated between the human team and Ember. Translating when communication broke down, the work was dangerous and exhausting. The energy levels in the caves were so high that human equipment often overloaded and failed. Several times, team members had to be evacuated when power surges made the air itself dangerous to breathe. Ember seemed to be the only one who could work safely with the full power of the crystal systems. His dragon physiology allowed him to conduct and channel energies that would have killed a human instantly. But even for him, the work was taking a toll. His scales were beginning to darken from their normal golden color to deep red, and Maya could see that he was exhausting himself. As they worked deeper in the cave system, Ember's ancestral memories became stronger. He began to understand not just how the technology worked, but why his people had built it. The dragons had faced the same geological crisis 3,000 years ago. Their solution had not been to leave the planet, but to become partners with it, working together to maintain the balance that allowed life to flourish. The human team was amazed by what they learned. Dr. Phillips discovered that the dragon technology was based on principles that human science had never imagined. The crystals did not just store energy, they stored information, memories, even what seemed like consciousness itself. Lieutenant Morrison found that the dragon engineering was far more advanced than anything humans had built. The systems were designed to last for thousands of years. With minimal maintenance, they could adapt to changing conditions automatically. But the most important discovery was how the dragon and human technologies could work together. The human computers were better at processing large amounts of data quickly. The dragon crystals were better at understanding complex patterns and relationships. When they were combined, they created something more powerful than either could achieve alone. Maya watched Ember as he worked with the human team, and she realized that something fundamental was changing in him. He was no longer just the baby dragon she had rescued years ago. The awakening of his ancestral memories was transforming him into something that bridged the gap between his ancient people and the humans who now lived on their planet. The work continued for weeks. Every day, the seismic readings showed that the planet's instability was getting worse. The first small earthquakes had already begun, and Maya's computer models predicted that the major catastrophe would begin within days. As the deadline approached, Ember began spending long hours alone with the largest crystal formation in the deepest part of the cave. Maya could hear him making sounds she had never heard before, complex harmonies that seemed to resonate through the entire mountain. When she asked him what he was doing, Ember drew symbols that were hard for Maya to understand. The closest translation she could make was that he was waking up the sleeping mind of the mountain. On the night before the final activation of the system, Maya found Ember sitting quietly beside the great crystal. His scales were now almost completely red, and they pulsed with an inner light that matched the rhythm of the crystal itself. Maya sat down next to him, just as she had done so many evenings in her lab when he was small. But now, instead of a baby dragon who needed her care, Ember had become a bridge between two civilizations, carrying the knowledge of his ancient people and the hopes of 30,000 humans. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Made a sound that was part purr, part song, and part something that had no human equivalent. Through their years together, Maya had learned to understand his complex communications. His message was clear. He was ready to save the planet, even if it meant sacrificing himself to do it. The morning of the activation was the 7th anniversary of the day Maya had found Ember in the cave. She stood beside him in the crystal chamber, watching as he prepared to become the living bridge between dragon technology and human science. His scales now glowed deep crimson, pulsing in rhythm with the massive crystals that surrounded them. Commander Brady had evacuated all non-essential personnel from the area around the cave system. Only Maya, Dr. Phillips, Lieutenant Morrison, and a few technicians remained to monitor the equipment. Everyone understood that what they were about to attempt had never been tried before. No one knew if it would work. Ember moved to the center of the crystal formation. The largest crystal, as tall as 3 humans and wide enough for Ember to wrap his arms around, began to glow brighter as he approached. Maya watched through her instruments as energy readings spiked beyond anything her equipment had ever recorded. The activation sequence began at exactly sunrise. Ember placed his claws on the surface of the great crystal, and immediately the chamber filled with a sound like the planet itself was singing. Deep harmonic tones resonated through the rock, traveling down into the planet's core and out into space. Maya monitored Ember's vital signs while Dr. Phillips tracked the energy flows through the crystal network. The power levels were enormous, far beyond what any human could survive. But Ember had been born for this. His dragon physiology allowed him to conduct energies that would have vaporized a human instantly. For the first hour, everything seemed to be working perfectly. The crystal network came online section by section, creating a planet-wide web of energy that connected every major geological formation on New Haven. Maya could see on her displays how the system was beginning to redirect the dangerous stresses in the planet's crust. But then the readings began to change in ways that frightened her. Ember's body temperature was rising beyond safe levels. His heartbeat was becoming irregular. The energy flowing through him was so intense that Maya could see his scales beginning to smoke. "Ember, you need to reduce the power level," Maya called to him through the communication system they had set up, but Ember could not respond. He was completely focused on maintaining his connection with the ancient technology. Through the crystal network, he could feel every fault line, every stress point, every dangerous buildup of pressure throughout the planet. He was becoming one with the geological forces that threatened to destroy New Haven. The critical moment came at noon. Deep beneath the colony, the primary fault line that Maya's computers had identified as the most dangerous began to shift. This was the fracture that would trigger a cascade of earthquakes. If it moved in the wrong direction, through the crystal network, Ember reached out with his mind and touched the fault line. Maya watched in amazement as her seismic monitors showed the dangerous stress being redirected away from populated areas. Instead of causing earthquakes, the geological energy was being channeled upward and outward, forming focused beams that shot harmlessly into space. All across New Haven, the same process was happening. Dangerous fault lines were being stabilized. Underground pressure was being released safely. The planet's crust was settling into a new, stable configuration that would last for thousands of years. But the effort was destroying Ember. Maya could see that his life signs were becoming weaker. By the minute, the energy flowing through his body was more than any living creature should be able to endure. "Ember, it's working," Maya shouted to him. "The planet is stable. You can stop now." For a moment, Ember seemed to hear her. His eyes opened and looked directly at Maya. In that gaze, she saw all the love and gratitude that had grown between them over 7 years. She saw the baby dragon she had rescued, the intelligent companion who had shared her lonely life, and the magnificent being he had become. Then Ember made a decision that showed just how much he had learned about sacrifice and responsibility from his human family. Instead of stopping the process, he poured even more of his life energy into the crystal network. He was not just stabilizing the immediate crisis. He was programming the ancient systems to prevent similar disasters for centuries to come. The final surge of energy was so intense that it knocked Maya and the other humans to the ground. Every piece of electronic equipment in the cave overloaded and shut down. The crystals blazed with light so bright that it could be seen from orbit. Then, suddenly, everything was quiet. Maya picked herself up from the cave floor and looked toward the crystal formation. Ember was still standing, but his scales had changed. From crimson to a deep, rich purple that seemed to contain flecks of starlight. He was breathing, but slowly and shallowly. Maya ran to him and gently touched his head. Ember's eyes opened, and he made a soft sound that was barely audible. But Maya could hear in that sound all the communication they had shared over the years. He was telling her that he was all right, that the mission had succeeded, and that he was proud of what they had accomplished together. The reports from around New Haven confirmed that they had saved the planet. The dangerous seismic activity had stopped completely. The geological surveys showed that the planet's crust was now more stable than it had been in thousands of years. 30,000 human lives had been saved, but Ember's ordeal had changed him in ways that became clear over the following days. The enormous energies he had channeled had awakened something deep in his dragon genetics. His scales remained their new purple color, and he carried himself with a dignity and wisdom that spoke of ancient knowledge fully realized. Word of what had happened on New Haven spread quickly through human space. Within weeks, ships arrived, carrying scientists, diplomats, and representatives from the Galactic Council. They came expecting to find primitive humans who had stumbled across alien technology. Instead, they found a partnership that challenged everything they thought they knew about cooperation between different species. Maya found herself appointed as Earth's first xenological ambassador. Her years of caring for Ember had taught her more about interspecies communication than any formal training could have provided. Ember became the official representative of the Pyrothean legacy, speaking for his extinct people and sharing their knowledge with the wider galaxy. But their greatest achievement was not the technology or the diplomatic breakthroughs. It was the proof that two completely different forms of life could form bonds of love and trust that made both stronger. Maya had saved Ember's life as a baby, but in raising him, she had discovered something profound about what it meant to be human. In a universe full of other intelligent beings, together, Maya and Ember traveled to other worlds, helping species facing similar geological crises. They taught the techniques they had developed on New Haven, showing how different technologies and ways of thinking could be combined to solve problems that seemed impossible. Years later, when Maya was asked to speak about her experience at the Galactic Council, she always returned to that first night in her laboratory when a dying baby dragon had looked up at her with trust and hope. "I thought I was saving him," Maya told the assembled representatives of dozens of species. "But he was the one who saved me. He taught me that the greatest strength any intelligent being can have is the willingness to care for someone who needs help, even when that someone is completely different from yourself." Ember, now fully grown and magnificent in his purple scales, stood beside Maya as she spoke. His presence reminded everyone in the chamber that the bonds between different species could create something more powerful than either could achieve alone. The orphaned baby dragon had indeed changed Maya's life forever. But perhaps more importantly, their partnership had changed what it meant to be intelligent beings in a universe that was vast, dangerous, and full of opportunities for those brave enough to reach across the differences that separated them. Their story became a symbol of hope for civilizations throughout the galaxy. Proof that love, trust, and cooperation could overcome any obstacle, even the fundamental forces that shaped planets and stars.